Welcome to Simple Endurance Coaching's Everyday Cyclists and Runners Guide to Performance video podcast. I'm Paul Worlowski, head coach and owner of Simple Endurance Coaching. Each week we talk about one thing that's working for everyday cyclists and runners for their performance, health, and fitness. Subscribe to the podcast and sign up on the website below for the Simple Endurance Coaching core strength and stability video. Here's this week's podcast. In the 50-plus master cyclocross races, you'll see some of the fastest men and women on the course. But if you are now racing in the 50-plus, should you do your racing and preparation differently now that you're a little older? And how can you optimize your performance to do your best in the 50-plus races? Stay tuned. What are the key differences between racing as a 50-plus master and a younger rider? So the key differences between racing as a 50-plus racer and a younger rider is really the balance between pushing and taking care of yourself. You need to listen to your body a lot more. You need to be able to be aware that if you are trying to race twice on the weekend and then doing more intervals during the week, it's not sustainable. You've got to listen to your body. You may need extra recovery days. You may need more time to rest. You also really need to pay attention to your nutrition, to strength training, and to yoga to create some kind of balanced, sustainable program for the whole season. What should you focus on with training for cyclocross as a 50-plus masters racer? So the idea of training for a cross in the middle of the season or even at the beginning of the season like it is now is consistency and staying consistent throughout your training so that you're not just crushing yourself in the weekend racing and then not doing anything during the week because you're too smashed. But think of being consistent throughout the week so that you are really crushing it on the weekend, but then doing some recovery rides, doing some strength, doing some yoga, doing maybe a partial interval session, or maybe doing some more practice if there are some things you're noticing may need to be worked on. Remember that racing counts as your interval sessions. So if you've got 2 or 3 a week that you can manage and you race twice, that's your interval session. The other key thing to think about is that you want to maintain that cardiovascular fitness through base and endurance training. You need to stay up with those long endurance miles. And so if you have a weekend where you're only racing once, then the other day is long endurance. If you don't race at all one weekend, do long endurance both days, just so you keep that base going. You're going to get enough speed work from racing. You need to keep that base of, maintain that base of fitness. And likewise, during the week, practice your cross skills. Use your pre-rides as a cross skills practice. If you're going to race twice, use the first one as your race. Use the second one as a place to practice your skills and figure out, well, maybe I could have taken that particular line or tried that when I'm tired, whatever it might be. Why does diet and nutrition matter to a 50-plus racer? Diet and nutrition are absolutely critical as a 50-plus racer because we need to keep proper fueling to not only fuel our racing, but fuel our recovery. And so that if you have your energy levels are dripping or dropping because you're not eating enough or not eating right, that's going to make a difference. So you need to keep proper fueling to maintain your energy levels, to maintain your endurance, and to maintain and produce your optimal performance for training and racing. This means, a well-balanced diet. Carbs are still your main fuel. Until otherwise proven by science. Right now, you need the carbs to be able to sustain the glycogen, especially in a short, hard race like cyclocross. You need that kind of fuel to keep you going. And if you only eat a little bit beforehand, if you only eat a little the night before, you're not going to have enough you're going to flame out after a few minutes and not have enough fuel to sustain you throughout that whole time. However, that also means you need some protein and some fat to be able to sustain those kind of efforts. Protein especially afterwards to repair and maintain your muscle mass. Fruits and vegetables, obviously, hydration, and make sure that you're timing your meals. Look at that you're eating enough the night before, that you're eating a good meal before a race, 3 hours before a race, and then making sure that you're doing a good recovery meal afterwards. What are some race day strategies that are important for masters racers? Race day strategies, these are basically the same as any other rider with a couple of variations, depending if you're racing with the 50 plus riders or the older riders. Everybody's in the same boat, but if you're a little bit older and racing with the youngsters, then you need to be smarter and think about doing a better pre-ride on the course so you really get your lines dialed in. But here are 4 that are going to work for you. Number 1, get a good warm-up. We're older. It takes us longer to warm up. We've got to get going. Plan a bathroom stop because it always happens. So make sure that you plan that into your warm-up, that you warm up, maybe have a bike available to go run and use the bathroom, come back, warm up a little bit more, or get out on the course, know where the porta potties are. I know I'm talking about that a lot, but it's really important. And if you're old enough, make sure that you're hydrating. Make sure that you get a chance to ride the course before you are racing it, because we have to ride smarter. We have to ride. We don't have the snap that the youngsters have. We have to be able to be smarter through the lines so that we can carry our speed longer and not have to jam on the bike every time you come out of a corner. For nutrition, you need to make sure that you're eating early, so you get your 3 hours beforehand, but then get a good snack in before the race. Get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a half one, an hour before the race. Have a goo or a maple syrup before the race so you get that glycogen all ready to roll so it can be used as fuel right from the start. Pace yourself. I know that we're not always the smartest tools in the shed when it comes to starts and pacing ourselves. We sometimes tend to go exceptionally hard at the start, burn ourselves out, and then limp in at the finish. Maybe we go a little bit slower and then start picking people off in the races. And we think more about what we are capable of and then pushing just a little bit beyond that as opposed to try to pushing it a lot. The 4th one is, I think, something that everybody can do, especially us older folks, to visualize the course, but not just visualize ourselves going through, staying positive with the whole visualization so that we could see ourselves in that particular corner with that little bit of slick spot, hitting it, sliding out. What are we going to do? Visualizing getting right back on the bike and going. Visualize maybe another time we take that corner and we are keeping our bike more upright. Maybe one part of the course we're visualizing ourselves being able to make it up, riding it, but then we can visualize what happens if we don't make it when we're riding and we have to take a jump off our bike and run up and attack up the hill. Maybe the sand pit is a challenge for us, but you visualize not only being successful, but visualize what you do if something goes wrong on the course, because we can't control necessarily what goes wrong on the course, but we can control how we respond to it. And if we are able to see ourselves responding in a positive way, that's going to make us better in the race. Why do you talk so much about strength training for masters racers? I talk so much about strength training, especially for us older folks, because it's so important. Between strength and yoga, there's nothing that's really as important to maintain your fitness as strength training and yoga. For older folks, we lose lean muscle much more quickly than we did in our 20s. And so we need to do strength training to try to maintain that and even build our strength training, not just our quads and our butt, but our full body, that we are trying to target full body work, especially going side to side, because your glute medius, your little side butt muscles where there's that little concave spot in your butt, those muscles are the ones that keep us from moving side to side, but they are their stabilizer muscles. We don't ever work those. So doing clamshells, doing monster walks with bands around your knees, doing hip lifts. Anytime where you're pushing out against those muscles to strengthen them is really good. For example, to keep yourself fit during the season. You also really want to target your core muscles, and by core I mean basically your hips to your shoulders, front, back, side. You may also want to start building in some plyometric exercises, which are essentially jumping. And it's not just the jump, but it's the landing, and landing softly, because that tends to work those muscles that really help cyclocross. I might even include kettlebell swings as a plyometric exercise, because kettlebell swings are great for building snap, because it's a hip going back and a hip pop, pop, pop. And so you're constantly popping in your hips, and that really builds some snap. And finally, strength training, if you can be consistent about it, even during the race season, that really helps maintain that lean muscle mass. Obviously, the week before nationals or the week before your key A+ event, you don't want to lift because you want to be as fresh as possible, but still doing some body weight strength, some yoga strength will help. Why is yoga so important for people over 50? Yoga is so important because it builds a lot of those muscles and the joint strength that we don't get when we ride or we don't get when we run. It improves your balance. Doing a tree pose where you're just standing there helps build strength in that hip, but it also really works on your ankle strength and your knee strength and all the muscles that are your balance muscles, as well as it also builds core strength. It helps with your mental focus because you're trying to think about the muscles and the movements while you breathe. It is also great breathing practice. Learning to breathe through your nose, for example, can be a great way of managing stress. Being able to simply breathe into your belly during your race and learning how to do that. Finally, yoga is a really good tool to prevent injuries because you can increase some of your joint mobility. Notice that I'm not saying stretching and flexibility, but I'm saying mobility, the ability of your joints to move more healthily, and can improve some body awareness. What are some specific yoga poses for cyclocross racers? So here are some specific poses for cross racers. Downward facing dog really works your posterior chain and in your shoulders, your posterior chain being your hips, your glutes, your hamstrings, your calf muscles, and your Achilles. Any of the warrior poses 1, 2, and 3 really build a lot of hip and core strength and open up your hips as well. Tree pose, like I mentioned, is a great balance pose. Bridge pose, which we mentioned with building your glute medius, is when you're on your back and your knees are up in the air and you bring your hips up in the air. And you're really working on your glutes, but if you have a band around your knees, you actually work some of your glute medius muscles as well. Pigeon pose is another one. Low lunge is another pose that are really good specific poses for cyclocross racers. And us older cyclocross racers can benefit from these by doing these. Just a quick routine after hard workouts, on Mondays after a long weekend of racing, after racing, just to keep ourselves mobile and limber. And what is the purpose of cyclocross anyways? Remember, we are old guys and old women. We're over 50. We're not going to be making any money on this deal. Cross is supposed to be fun. You think about that, we're older people taking perfectly good bikes and trying to trash them on grass and mud and sand and all these nasty things that really hurt our bikes. It's really dumb if you think about it. It's meant to be fun. Remember also that cyclocross has kind of a billion little challenges in the race, all of which present opportunities. We always have moments where our bike slides or we get the wrong line or somebody cuts us off or something happens. It's an opportunity for kind of growth to be able to say, okay, I can handle this, I can manage this, I can learn from this. And finally, cyclocross is a great chance to see progress. Each week when you were racing, you can see, I'm starting to take these lines better, or my start is starting to get better. So it's a great chance for you to challenge yourself and to learn more about yourself and become better as a person. I mean, that's a pretty amazing process in cyclocross. Thanks for watching this edition of the Simple Endurance Coaching video podcast, the Everyday Cyclist and Runners Guide to Performance. Each week we dive into what's working in endurance sports training for everyday cyclists and runners. Find the full article on my blog linked in the notes and get a free core strength and stability training video when you opt in to receive my weekly blog posts about what works in endurance sports. Sign up below for a virtual coffee so we can talk about your goals, ask questions, and talk about making your endurance training more effective, fun, and simple with a capital S. Thanks, and I'll see you out on the road.